Okay, so hello everyone. I am Samantha, your moderator for today's talk. We have assembled an absolute powerhouse of product-led growth experts who are ready to share their knowledge on optimizing onboarding in the product-led growth model. Before we dive into the topic, for those who are joining that do not know what the PLG strategy is, it really is the strategy of focusing on your product as the main vehicle to acquire, activate, and retain customers. So compared to the sales growth model, which uses traditional marketing and sales tactics, companies that are using PLG focuses on creating a product that is so good and intuitive that it naturally attracts and retains customers. It also allows customers to try out the product for free and to see how intuitive and impressive it is and how much they need to use it before actually subscribing to a paid plan that they need that fits their business needs. So this brings us to our topic discussion today on onboarding. It is crucial for driving user activation, accelerating time to value, increasing user engagement, and collecting user feedback. Onboarding, it ultimately contributes to the growth and success of the product in a user-centric manner. This is why I'm excited to have this opportunity to discuss with our panel on the strategies that they have and experiments that they have implemented and learned from, because this is an ongoing process. During this discussion, you are, as are our attendees, please ask any questions along the way, any questions on the experiments that our panel is explaining or things that you're unsure of. We're going to answer that in the Q&A section. So to get us started, I will have our panel start introducing themselves. Mario, let's start with you and tell us about yourself and what you're up to.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Samantha, for having me. Hey, everyone. I'm mostly I'm Mario, as you said, and I mostly work on B2B growth. Growth is many things to many people. So I am more towards product than I am towards marketing as far as my bias is concerned, and 100% B2B. So I'm right now VP of Growth at Graphex.com, and I'm also an advisor for many companies that are going through, that are Series A plus companies, to help them with to help them grow. Essentially, very monotonous life.
Great, thanks. Klaus? I'll have you go next.
Okay. So yeah, hello everyone. Thanks a lot for joining. I'm always happy to talk to people, as I called you veterans. So Aggelos already complained, but it is more meant for the knowledge. So I'm already 25 years in the MarTech industry, so I can call myself also a veteran. And like last 5 years I spent with UserSnap as a head of growth and now chief revenue officer. And what I liked, because in my previous life I was always in sales and a little bit in marketing, and I wanted to combine that. And I found that in the growth marketing, in the growth area of SaaS companies, and especially in the area of PLG and also B2B, so the product-led growth approach, where you build a product that kind of converts or brings their own customers, converts their own customers, that always fascinated me, and that's why I'm still fully hooked on. And yeah, I love this discussion to learn also about your experiences, Mario and Aggelos.
Great. Last but not least, Aggelos.
Hi everybody. I'm Aggelos. I'm a growth dude, like everybody here. I'm also a licensed psychotherapist, and qualitative research is very much at the core of what I do. So what I do, I like building models, repeatable models, where we basically collect and analyze research, qualitative research and quantitative research. And based on that, we pass very useful insights to every department that is involved into the growth process, which is pretty much every department in the company, to help them grow, to help these teams grow, and to help them work on steroids, as we like to say, which is a very, very lame expression. But imagine a team that has very, very to the point insights and advice on exactly what they need to do based on research. So that's what I do. I build such models for B2B SaaS companies. And that's my passion. That's why I'm a psychotherapist as well, because I like going very deep into what customers do, what people do, explain behaviors. And yeah, that's who I am.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you all. I'm really great introductions and excited to kick off now. Okay, so before we go into, because I'm excited to hear about all the experiments and things that we could take back and start implementing right away. Let's start by explaining what are we optimizing for? What is this objective before we go into like what experiments we need to use. And for this question, Mario, I'm going to have you start to lead the discussion on this.
Yeah. So it's one of my favorite questions. What is and for those who have worked with me, not seeing anyone here that did, I'm always that guy that asks, what is the goal of this? What is the objective behind this? And that's the most fundamental question, not just this, but for really everything. But in this context, especially when you're running teams that have a strong bias for action, startups, scale-ups, if you aren't clear on the objective, you may be moving fast towards nowhere. I also like to call this the random acts of growth strategy. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things, and you even incentivize that way of working, whereas you should really be focusing on the objective and on moving the needle. So, as far as onboarding is concerned, a common blind spot that this is a common blind spot, and so in my experience, I would say that the objective will help you get clarity, and most often than not, a monetization problem is really an onboarding or retention problem. An onboarding and retention problem is most often than not an acquisition problem. And an acquisition problem is most often than not a positioning problem. And so the objectives to me will help with that. Well, I'll end this with one practical tip about segmenting users. Make sure you know who your relevant users are. Make sure you can identify them as they go through their onboarding survey, however you profile them, and isolate that cohort and optimize and monitor that cohort separately than you do for the others. Because there's a lot of noise if you don't. And so you'll be optimizing for relevant users. I'll pause here. I would talk about this for hours, but happy to come back at something if you'd like.
Great. Yeah, so Klaus, do you have anything to add to this? And you guys feel free to jump in as questions are coming in.
Yeah, so first of all, I like that you mentioned, Mario, the positioning, because that's actually also something that I learned maybe the hard way. So because when like my previous life, I worked for an agency and a growth agency, and we did a lot of experimentation there, but often we didn't start at the top saying we didn't have the main goal in mind. So we always optimized, on the sub level. And I believe that's a very important thing, that you have this objective and the clarity. Where do you want to move? And I think at the end, it's also a positioning that is that should be clear. Where do you want to position your company? And then from there, define what are the experiments that you're doing. And like for us, we came down, for example, currently in the growth team. So each team has their KPIs, and based on that, we are planning and all the growth campaigns and also the experimentation, which is in our case PQLs and SQLs, might be a little bit boring, but we went a lot of rounds to come back to this original one. Mentioning one of the most impactful experiments that we did, and the question is, how is it connected to onboarding? It's pricing. Yeah. So unfortunately, this is the one screw that when you turn that, something amazing can happen immediately. But on the other hand, if we look more into the onboarding and back, what I learned from UserSnap the last 5 years is like, we did a lot in the onboarding to bring the people to value. You hear this all the time, bring them to the aha moment, but showing the value as they are kind of moving alone to a certain point, you have to join them in their journey. And that's where we're doing a lot of email nurturing and product tours to show which functionality based on the segments. That's a very good point, Mario. Based on the segment. So we have two main use cases. So we always have to be very careful what segment is coming in and what to show them. But in this case, we did a lot of experimentation. One last word on that. We, for example, changed our email onboarding from time-based to event-based. So whenever someone reaches a certain milestone, we are celebrating with them. And that brought a lot of engagement. So that was a very successful experiment on our side.
Very good. Aggelos, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah. Generally speaking, as growth people, SaaS people, PLG people, what we always like doing is taking actual human behaviors and creating theory about these human behaviors. This is basically what aha moment is. What is the aha moment? Is the natural need of a user to quickly figure out what the heck is going on here and why is this useful for me? So bring me something, give me something that will make me feel that what I'm doing here is worthy of my time, okay? And is what I want to do. I generally prefer the opposite. I generally prefer checking the human behavior, not really sticking to the theory and to the terms. Generally, that's what I do. So to answer the question, what sort of objectives can we have out of an onboarding? It really depends, but the very simple process that I typically use when I work with a client or when I work with a company in any different format is asking them qualitatively, what is it that you're seeking to achieve out of that? And then when we have that in an OKR style, like I wish to achieve that, okay? Every time if we break this down, we can match that with specific metrics alongside the onboarding. PQLs are basically one of these metrics. What are PQLs? Basically is a metric that defines that if the user does 1, 2, 3, probably they're interested in what we are showing them, in what they are doing with us. So it's a human behavior that we're trying to fit within a term, and we're trying to fit within specific product actions. So we have to define it qualitatively first. What is a user that is interested in what we are showing to him or her? What is a user that has an interesting time with us or finds something useful with us? How does that look like and feels like? What are they doing? And then bring that and connect that with specific metrics, numbers, quantitative stuff. I know that's a little bit of a Captain Obvious thing, but not a lot of companies do it. They jump directly in. We need to have an aha moment at this stage. No, nothing. You don't need to do anything. Every onboarding is custom. Everything is custom. And can I answer about the product tours that someone asked here? About the product tours, again, there's no specific rule about product tours. Generally speaking, there are some standard things that some good practices that we need to have in mind, but product tours depends. I think everybody in this room will tell you that it depends. It's not always distracting. It's not good or bad. It's not black or white. Generally speaking, product tours show you around. So if you have a huge app, you can't show me around for hour, I'll get bored. That's it. Natural human behavior and feeling. And another thing, product tools show you around. They don't show you how to do something. They don't explain you. So you can show me around in the room, but if you have some complex mechanisms within this room that I need to figure out, and I don't know, if you're teaching me email marketing and I don't know concepts of email marketing, showing me around the buttons and where things are will not really help me. And also depends on a third level. Sorry, I'm just saying that and I shut up. Showing me around what do I need now? And what will I need in a month from now? Or what will I need if another circumstance change? So we have product tools, we have the onboarding that I need now, we have the onboarding that I will need later, we have contextual onboarding. If I go there, that happens. So it's very custom. There's no black and white. That's what I wanted to say.
No, that's really great. It seems like we're diving already into sharing our insights and experiments that we're trying, which is fantastic. But to keep our conversation going in a flow, so now you have to define what your objective is and what you're optimizing for. You need to know this before you could actually do something, right? And to figure out, you need to be looking at this, and your teams need to be aligned. On to my follow-up question is, like, when should we do the experiments and what should we do? So we have touched a little bit on some of these things, but let's just address this question on when should we do an experiment, and what should we do? And I'm going to have Klaus kick us off with this discussion, and then you guys could jump in after.
Thanks. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, in my previous career, I worked because I wanted to learn more about growth hacking. I like that. So I joined a growth agency, and as I said, we did a lot of experimentations immediately. Yeah, we had a briefing with a client for half a day and then immediately jumped into experimentation. But actually we didn't know enough about the persona and use cases and how to help them make their life better with the software or product that we kind of marketed here. And that's, I think, happening too often. And I also saw that sometimes when I onboarded someone new in my team, they immediately jumped into action and wanted to do some experimentation. And I was always asking, okay, why are we doing that and for whom? And what is the goal for that? And I think from my perspective, if you have to do the research first, and that's, user research or feedback, listening to your customers, understanding the personas, understanding how your product helps them, is a foundation before you start experimenting. And when you have that, and you have also the clarity, and I think it comes back to what Mario initially said also about the segments, you have to understand it's not one customer and they're just replicants of this one customer. There are different people with different needs and pains, and you have to understand the ones that you want to serve. And then you can start, when you know the goal that you want to understand better, or let's say understand if this one functionality versus this others works better, or this onboarding works better or the other, you have to have your foundation ready. And that comes from user research and understanding your personas and use cases. When you have that, I think experimentation can work, but it's not always the only logical step. But I guess we have some people here who can also help when it is the logical step.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Aggelos, do you have anything you want to share? Because I know you, during our prep call, had some insights onto, when do you do these things?
Yeah. I have worked with founders that were obsessed with experimenting everything, and always pissed me off. And I've worked with founders that they were just taking random decisions and they were going forward. And I think the best practice is somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Generally speaking, we have to experiment, but we have to experiment when we don't know the answer, when we don't suspect the answer, when it's not obvious. Sometimes experimentation is like a buffer to avoid taking a decision. Companies, especially small companies, startup companies, don't grow by experimenting on every little detail. They have to take decisions with an amount of data and an amount of evidence that they have available. You cannot predict everything. You have to take some decisions. So that's one factor. Okay, experiment on things that are important, experiment on things that are expensive and they will cost you if you build them, and experimenting on them on a smaller version actually gives you important feedback, has a return on your experimentation investment. Okay, that's one thing. And the second thing, experiment when experimenting is cheaper than building. We will talk about that later, but sometimes when we're talking about product experiments, launching a product experiment might be not equal, but very comparable to building an MVP and launching it. An MVP is an experiment, is and is not. You're launching it with an experimentation mindset. You want to see what comes back, okay? But it's also a new feature or a new something, a new added thing within your product. So sometimes for the sake of experimenting in the past, we have worked like weeks on running an experiment, and we needed a month or a few more weeks to actually launch something. So measure a little bit, do this mental calculation. Do I need that experiment? Or if it's something small, can I just launch it and see what happens? And then I can take it back. Not everybody is looking at me. Not everybody is like examining what I'm launching. I can always take it. Or how much will this cost me to build it and experiment on it? What's the comparison with actually launching it? So just don't be obsessed with experimenting. You have to take some decisions, and the other extreme as well, just take random decisions. Somewhere in the middle. That's my. I know that doesn't come by the book. By the book, it would be if I would say everything needs to be experimented properly, and your spreadsheet with all the experimentations and the results and the metric that you're testing. That's not the case in the majority of companies. That we would love that to be the case, but it's not exactly that.
Okay. Good insight. Mario, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just agree generally with what was said. To run experiments, just to pick up on that last part, to run experiments, you need to have certain conditions. You need to be able to have a team that can create them cheap. You need to have volume so that the experiments don't take 2 or 3 quarters for you to get results on. So there's a bunch of things. So yeah, I absolutely agree that not everything needs to be an experiment, but I would say that everything absolutely needs to be measured. That everything absolutely needs to be measured so we can understand whether or not that have an impact or a second order effect that was unforeseen. The framework that I use to think about this, and I'll stop here, is that the data can be qualitative data or quantitative data. Will tell you what to focus on. Like where's the opportunity? And experimentation will help you find the answer. Will help you find the how. How do I improve this metric somehow? So this is more or less how I think of it. Obviously, if I know the how and I don't need to experiment, I can just go and make the change. There's some obvious things there, but that's more or less how I think about it.
Okay. Really good. So we understand that you can't do experiments for everything. You really have to have some focus on there, but like, how do you come up with these experiments that you want to try? Like, are we, listening to content like this that we are having a discussion, or how are you coming up with it when you're looking at your data?
Maybe if I can go, there's a lot of listening to things like this. There's a lot of keeping close to people in your network that are doing this all the time. So I have this group of people on WhatsApp that are a very small group, but really good people in growth, and so we're always sort of sharing ideas with one another's unexpected results, unexpected things. But if I focus on the the purpose of the experiment, which in my head is like figuring out how to address a certain issue that will drive an outcome, that will help an objective, hit an objective of some sort, or getting us closer to hitting that objective. So understanding that outcome, that objective, that metric is the first step. What I normally do next is ask myself, okay, so I have this outcome. I found this opportunity. I found this metric that I believe will yield the best results for whatever we're working on right now. What opportunities are there for me to move this forward? Mm-hmm. And then I start thinking about the opportunities of this. And then if I think about it's like a tree, right? You have the outcome, then you have multiple opportunities to address that outcome, and then you have multiple solutions or experiments that you run to address the outcome. And this is, you can learn more about this by reading the opportunity solution tree framework by Teresa Torres. But I like to keep this frame of mind. So normally what I have is a huge Miro board with a gigantic tree that gets populated to go right into the question of how do you come up with experiments. That gets populated with opportunities and potential solutions that come either from brainstorming with peers, but most of them come from, like, opportunities will come from mostly from talking to users, looking at data, how to address them. The majority of those will come from brainstorming with peers inside or outside the company, at least in my case. Yeah. Obviously, some users that I talk to very passionate about the product will give you some ideas, but that's more or less how I structure my thinking there. Opportunity Solution Tree, look it up, by Teresa Torres.
Will do.
She didn't build it for this, but I use it.
I want to double down on that, on what Mario said. Totally agree. I might be a little biased here because this is what I do. I analyze stuff and I propose things to be done or tested. One of the methods that I have used in the past, which helped me a lot when it comes to analyzing qualitative research and then bringing in the whole team into that, is analyzing them and giving them small movies. For example, when you speak with customers and you record the conversation, select a few important bits, a few repetitive bits, and give them to a video editor and build a simple 5 to 10 minute small after movie of your conversations with your customers. And then share that with key stakeholders within the team and ask them to see the movie, to feel the empathy, and just come up with ideas. And do a voice of the customer meeting. Do a simple meeting, bring your coffees, and just discuss this video, discuss what people told you. If you have a very simple process of, I do some research, or I get the existing qualitative data that I collect passively, like customer success data. I analyze them. I give something that people can empathize with, and then I do a simple meeting to discuss the findings. Then experiment ideas come by themselves. But people need to feel the empathy to have ideas. If we run, in my experience, which doesn't mean that I'm always right, just my biased subjective feeling, experiments come only when you build empathy with your user. Mm-hmm. Experiments like, oh, let's test this little technicality, they have a limit. You can read a few of them in blogs, you can read a few of them on LinkedIn proposed by experts, but the best custom experiments for your company come if you actually empathize with what the customers need.
Thanks for sharing that. And Klaus, I'm interested to hear your input on how you structure feedback. It's great to listen to, and I think it's part of the process of listening to experts and brainstorming, creating these trees, but there are also other processes of how you figure out what experiments need to be done. So I'm interested to hear how have you done in the past and what do you think?
I mean, maybe we have a more pragmatic approach, although it comes from the PLG number one name-giving person, Wes Bush, and his AAA process. So that's actually what we are using to find not only experiments, but also kind of what do we do next, which comes from analyze, ask, and act. And that, I think, goes back to what we originally said, that you have to have your goals and visions in mind, and that's what we do there. And when it comes to experiments, I also see that we place, and we not only have to have a goal whenever it comes to an experiment or campaign. Actually, we decide more, it's like a longer lasting campaign, and or is it an experiment which is in our terminology a shorter version of a campaign. Although I would even say a campaign is also kind of an experiment. What is important is that you have the goal, and that we find in this process also we kind of measure the baseline. So we take some numbers that we have from the past against which we can measure, is the experiment successful or not? And that's also the important outcome of each experiment, is like, did it fail or is it a success? And it's fine if it failed. It's like currently we have a experiment going on our website. We are identifying the industry of the person that is kind of visiting, and then we're sending different messages with kind of trust signals and giving the human touch, so offering like personal conversations and chats to the specific industries. And the next weeks will show if this works. So we also had similar tasks. We measured the baseline, and then we will see, is it now higher or lower? And if it's higher, it's seen as a success. If it's lower, then we will probably drop it out and try a new thing. So for us, the AAA process helped a lot. Of course, we're listening to our users constantly, and whatever we hear, we try to bring into this process and to see and how can we test it. And last but not least, I'm also listening to and following some smart people on LinkedIn, not only Mario and Aggelos, but also others. And there sometimes you get inspirations, and then you just try them and see if they fit into your kind of general direction and approach. And that's how we come up with experiments.
Oh, that's really great, and a good segue into, now that you've done these experiments, you've set your goals, like there are challenges around measuring the impact of these experiments. I'm sure you all have a lot to share from your experiences of implementing these. Like, what have been some of the challenges, and what continues to be when you're measuring the effectiveness of the experiment? I think we could start off, maybe Mario, if you want to kick us off here.
Yeah. So the measuring of impact, I guess, to me, the one of the primary goals of experiments is to learn. So I really trust the process. If I follow that process that I highlighted above, I really trust results will come. So I'm extremely pragmatic when it comes to measuring. At least I think I am. So whenever I run with an experiment, which obviously has an hypothesis behind it, I try to think of what this experiment, if this experiment succeeds, what metric will be affected? And are we confident that this metric is highly correlated with the definition of success? And if the team is like fine with whatever, that's okay. When we have data scientists in the team, the conversation can get tricky. But with the right mindset, we can always get to a level of confidence that we're comfortable with, and that we're not looking for perfection here. And then the second thing is, how do we validate? So there's the success of the experiment that you said, it's an experiment run as an A/B test. It's going to be fairly obvious to understand which one won and whatnot. But there's another thing. The other thing is, what second order effects could have happened based on that experiment, or as a consequence of that experiment. So for example, if we run an experiment that improves activation rate by 20%, but monetization decreases 30%. Is that a success? Obviously, no, right? We want to increase activation. We don't want to decrease monetization. And so unless, and we can make it more complex, unless monetization decreases by 30%, but MRR growth increases 35%, that would be all good. So what we really want to look for is what is the anti-metric or the second order effect. Another thing is that can happen also, which is sort of the opposite of this, is the experiment fails in the sense that we didn't find a winner, or we ran something and our success metric for that thing that we run was actually failed according to our definition of success. But there was a second order effect that turned out to be a very good thing that we did not realize. So we were trying to optimize for something, we failed to optimize that thing, but another metric moved, and it was quite a positive effect. And the experiment was actually not designed for that. And so, to me, just summing up really quickly, there's a metric that we track, and I'd like to track sort of the anti-metric or the second order effect as well. And so all of this, just spend 30 minutes thinking about it before you run the experiment or propose it, just to make sure you have a thesis. Because if you don't have a thesis, how can you even retrospect about what you learned? Which is theoretically the goal of all experiments.
Yeah, that's really, really smart. And yeah, definitely noted there. Klaus, do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always coming back to the last years of what I experienced, and I often read articles about how to do experiments right, and then I often heard about statistical significance. Whenever you're doing an experiment, do you have big enough like basis to get enough people to try it out? And you often don't. And my biggest problem or concern is, and Mario, you mentioned like how it impacted the revenue, for example. And for me, it was always super hard, and it still is, to be honest. The experiments that we did, on the one hand, like how do they affect? There is such a long path until it affects the revenue, for example. As I mentioned, the only experiment where I had this very clear linking or connection to revenue was pricing. There it was clear when we changed this, it impacted the revenue. Very often when we had other experiments, no idea, did it affect something? Yeah, it's very difficult. Let me share one of our experiments. It was back then also pricing, like we introduced a very small plan called Basic, $9, $19, super cheap. A lot of people, like 80 customers a month. So it increased tremendously. And our hypothesis was that they have an extended trial phase. But over time, it didn't convert to a certain point. So we couldn't find out if it really ever connected, or ever, like this hypothesis, if it ever was true, if these basic customers convert. It was super hard to measure. This is maybe not the most, like the one where we could have maybe measured with a lot of effort if our hypothesis and our plans would have like be true or not. But there are so many experiments where it's really hard when you change something in the onboarding, how it affects the trial sign-up phase or the activation phase, or the revenue phase. So the impact and attribution is, I think, one of the biggest problems. So what we came back is, we are very clear on the goal and how to measure an experiment, have a hypothesis behind it, but we also try to not go too far beyond, the things that you can measure from an experiment. Yeah, so you cannot often measure to the growth of the company and connect it there. And you, in many cases, you should not try. You should rather bring it down to what is the nearest metric that you can measure, and based on that, you define it as a success and not. And the amount of experiments over time will bring you success. That is at least what I experienced. Maybe I'm wrong, or I haven't understood something. So I'm happy to hear more about that. Maybe Aggelos, you can add something to that.
No, I totally agree with both of you. I want to double down on what you both said. I remember, and that gets connected with the previous question, when should you experiment or not? I want to share a little story. I remember within the context of a client, we were discussing if a product-led approach will be more successful versus a sales-led approach. And if we break down the pros and the cons of a sales-led and a product-led approach, I think we will all agree that a sales-led approach is converts higher, but converts a smaller number of leads. Okay. Also, the call to actions that accompany sales-led approaches are not that sexy. They don't have the word free trial, the phrase free trial. They don't have see it in action. They're like get a demo or book a call. Okay. So should we experiment if we want to compare in an A/B version, a product-led onboarding and a sales-led onboarding? Should we experiment on the number of people that will actually engage into this onboarding, that will click the button and start the onboarding or book a demo? No, we shouldn't. Because as soon as you stick the word free trial or the word free there, by definition, it will be clicked more. Should we wonder and test what converts more? No, we shouldn't. The human-driven approaches always convert more. I mean, it will be a huge exception if a product-led self-serve approach converts more than a human-driven approach. So the thing that makes a difference is what gives us more money at the end of the equation. So what increases MRR? And that's when things become difficult, because the metric that actually gives you the answer is at the end of it. It's deep within the customer journey. So as you all said, you need to find things that signal the success earlier within the process. So is that easy? No, it's a pain in the ass. I think everybody agrees with that. But generally speaking, if users are the right people, and you know which are the right people, and if you don't know, check which of their users are right, which give you more money, which engage more. So if you bring the right users, segmentation, and they do the things you want within the product, engagement, these are good signals. These are metrics that lead towards success. So you have to monitor all of them. But good luck if it's a product experiment. Good luck testing that in a by the book process.
Yeah. Well, we will stay with you because my follow-up question has to do with sales-led and product growth. So this is a loaded question, so feel free to answer it in order you want to. But when does onboarding stay product-led growth, and when does it move to sales-led? And how is that different between, say, the B2C/B2B? I know we're focusing on like B2B, but what's the difference there? And do you actually need a sales team in PLG?
Okay, perfect. That's one of the most triggering questions for me, because I have had to reject money from people that wanted to be product-led, and that hurts me when I reject money from people. But I had to, because they were coming without product market fit. They were coming influenced by the hype, because I think we all agree that there is a hype about PLG, but it's not a silver bullet. So PLG is good. The principles are very good, but it doesn't mean that as soon as you become product-led, there will be an explosion of success within your product and everybody will chase to experience your value. Product-led, in my view, is an optimization, should be considered an optimization. What does that mean? I have a car that runs, that does the job, and product-led is like, I support the car, I change the wheels to make it run faster. So if you haven't proved that the car works, aka PMF, then making the process product-led, so pretty much meaning letting the user self-serve, at least up to a point, might actually backfire for you, because you let the users do something and you don't control the process. You lose the opportunity of speaking with them at a very early stage of the journey, which is an insane qualitative research for you, insane data that you can use to become product-led in the future. Okay? So product-led, please don't come to me and tell me I want to be product-led. I need a product-led onboarding. Product-led is a bigger transformation that you need to have when certain conditions are met. For example, what are these conditions? If you don't have a relatively steady selling motion through marketing activities, then why should you become product-led? Why should you build a scalable machine when your marketing is not scalable yet? We typically build a scalable machine when something is scalable here, and our product and our onboarding is the blocker. If that here is not scalable, your product is not really blocking something. So making it product-led actually will reduce the benefit of taking them by the hand and converting them by yourself. So that's one thing. Second thing, you have a product that has a very, very steep learning curve, and you come to me and you tell me, Aggelos, we want to be product-led. Of course, you can be a little bit product-led. You can product-ledize a few processes, but can we take an onboarding that lasts 15 days and just make it 100% product-led? Just stick an AppQ's onboarding and make it self-serve? No, we can't. It will backfire. You will lose money. You will chase me because I did something to you that actually hit your MRR. So you shouldn't do that. So please don't consider product-led transformations as a silver bullet. Now, to your question, if we can have sales teams in a product-led model, as we discussed in the pre-call, that's not a black or white thing. That's not a dilemma. You can be 30% product-led or 80% product-led. I was working with Glowfox a few months ago, and Glowfox wanted to be product-led, but not 100%. So there were a lot of human-driven processes within the onboarding because their onboarding was huge. Okay. So we productized a lot of things to increase the efficiency of their humans, but we didn't let the users self-serve, because if the users would self-serve, we would lose them. Yeah. Makes sense. So you can product-ledize parts, but not the whole process. And still have your sales team. So that's pretty much my answer.
Okay. Before we move on, we have like 10 minutes. So I think we have 5 more minutes of discussion. I want to be able to answer some. I see some Q&A questions have been already answered by the panel, but we still have some in the pipeline. So Mario, Klaus, if you have anything to add on this question, let me know before we move on to, I think, the fun part of what experiments can people start to implement. So did you? Sorry, do you have anything to add on, like, your opinion on when it becomes sales-led, or should there be a sales team in a product? Should you have a sales team if you're a product-led growth company?
I'll say very short observation. If you have a low, if you work. You may have all of them, but for low potential ACV customers or low potential lifetime value, optimize for self-serve. For higher potential lifetime value, optimize for sales or hybrid. You can also say for hybrid, use them for more or less in the middle, but that's more or less how the framework I use. And I'll pause because I'm sure Klaus may have something else to add to this.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to quickly jump in so we have time for the Q&A, but I think that's an important one because it's also currently something we are circling around, I would say. So we are clearly a PLG company, and we worked longest time, like especially if you have no, or in our case, low touch products where you don't need so much influence from outside. People can onboard themselves, self-service, put credit card in. So we have all of that. That's great. But from time to time, companies came, like big, huge companies, Fortune 500, teams of, and they wanted to understand the product, but they are not used to this process. So you have to, either you can say no, or you can say do it as the others do, and then you might lose them because their procurement doesn't understand how a credit card works. Okay, you know what I mean? So I think it comes back to, it depends on the positioning to answer the question, at least, not at least, also B2B and B2C. I think in B2C, there is rarely a sales-led model. There is rather a customer success or customer service model, maybe, versus a product-led or self-service model. But in B2B, where we are, I see more and more that when the ACV is high enough, that you can add the human touch, what we are doing, for example, because our positioning is also going higher up. We don't want to have the $10 and $19 plans, as I mentioned before. We want to kind of bring enough value that people want, or companies want to spend also more money and see the value for that. So we are adding the human touch, because often it's not enough. People don't have the time to read all of that, understand if it's covering. And then I think a certain like human touch can help you a lot, which is nowadays called PLS. So it's a little bit the new phrase, product-led sales, where I see that we are more and more heading. So to answer that question, I see that, do you need a sales team in product-led growth? I would say, do you need a sales team for your company? It depends on the product and the positioning. Yeah. And I love PLG, I love PLS. I'm left the world of sales-led, as it's often connected to also professional services, but I think it totally depends on product and your positioning. Yeah.
It's really good. And thanks for sharing. So our last discussion question, and I think it's really helpful for our viewers, it's, after all of this, from your experiences, could you share some of easy to implement product experience that they could get started with? And I will kick off with Mario to tell us some of his recommendations.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, the usual suspects. If you onboarding survey questions, checklists, tours, whatever, that's like very, very standard. Just try them all, provided that you have an objective. And then the other, I guess, not so simple, but definitely worth looking at is personalization of your onboarding journey based on whatever you learned from your survey questions. So you learned that you have users that want to, typically the majority of your relevant users are split. This is an hypothesis, and users of type A, they want to do this, B, they want to do that, C, they want to do whatever, and all others that you don't care about because you're not able to monetize them. And so for A, B, C type of users, personalize them, personalize the journey. For example, with a template, with a different template for each, or something along those lines. For more complex things, if you have a good data science team, and if you have enough data, you can think about predicting what the next steps or the next actions that you want to put in front of them are, and sort of dynamically personalize the experience so that you get users without any specific order, because not all humans follow your checklist. Without any specific order, get to experience the parts of the product that makes sense, and that will get more value for them and for you as a result.
Klaus, anything you would like to share here?
Yeah, but I always like what Mario, I'm just hooking after that. It's like, so yeah, we are also using the product tours, checklists, etc. But we, like, I think was 1.5 years ago, we introduced a few questions in the onboarding to kind of segments, and especially for the use cases, and that helped us a lot to personalize the whole onboarding. And I think that brought what I can remember, like, improved the conversion rate quite a lot, significantly, because you could, like, to the point, like, give all the tours, and we have the two main use cases. What I want to add to experiments that we did, and is on the one hand, we were firing user feedback questions after converting, which is not in the onboarding, but after conversion, and that gave us so much insights. We asked about their which is almost research, if you would see it not as a experimentation, but it helped us to verify that that we are bringing, like, the product market fits with our product. Yeah, and we asked them what they use UserSnap for, and it was so great, because we learned so much about, like, how they actually use product again to what we initially thought. And the second is when they canceled, we were firing based on the different categories they chose, why they are canceling the subscription, which is sometimes happening. We fired different widgets with UserSnap to kind of bring them back, to, if they was too expensive, we could offer a discount. I hope not too many customers are listening and trying that out now. But if this was for other reasons, like too complex or something, we could always act. And that's also helped us a lot in kind of, I think we decreased by more than 25% our churn based on that initiatives. Yeah, and that was great for us. It helped a lot. Doing, like, user research experiments there.
Great examples.
Really good. Thank you. So I see you guys have been answering the questions that have been coming in and typing in, so that's really great. So for us, we have 2 minutes left, and I will just leave with one question that you either could jump in and answer. But either, when is the best way to get user feedback during onboarding? When is it the right time to ask for that feedback? Is it at the beginning? What type of methods are you using? And any specific tools that you could give tips for the users?
I can quickly share some. Generally speaking, I like to get user feedback before I launch an onboarding. Run calls, have the onboarding either in a working prototype and just let the user share thoughts while they're running the onboarding. Or again, before launching it, you can have some user testing. During the onboarding, I try not to interrupt the experience. But of course, we always watch user recordings. We specific metrics that are important. We check our PQLs, and then we might have some feedback sessions with the users. We might, if it's necessary, or we might. That's something that that I have used in the past that I like. We might manufacture a couple of reasons to speak with the users afterwards, which in reality are feedback for us. So it might be like a call to see what you need, a call to see what's your experience so far to help you, but it's basically user research for us. So you can manufacture some reasons to get into a call with them and get feedback. That's how I used to do it in the past.
Great, thank you.
I jump in on that because user feedback is our business. So, so actually, I mean, there was previously a question from Daniel about magic trials and that you can gamify it. And I think that's very important so the moment we asking questions is often when the user achieved something. Yeah, and not always, as you totally correctly said, you should not bring them out of the flow. But whenever there is a big milestone reached, we try to ask for feedback, and people feel listened to, and give us often a very deep, in-depth answer and feedback to how the worked out for them, what worked, what didn't work, and that helped us to optimize a lot of things. So in the context because we also tried, sending emails after 7 days when they didn't convert and so on, and asking. We also get feedback there, but you're outside. So we love that when you have the possibility to get feedback in the context where they are right now, because in that moment you can react to any kind of action behavior, and that also triggers a lot of reactions. And yeah, that's why also we using UserSnap. But that's helpful. As I said, after a milestone, you have this positive or negative effect. If they couldn't reach the milestone, you can also ask. And that's actually when we trigger user feedback.
Fantastic. Mario, anything last before we wrap the session?
No, I was going to answer in the same lines of what Klaus said. As far as tools are concerned, in all honesty, I think UserSnap is the best there is for this. Very simple to implement and very affordable as well. I would lean towards asking more feedback than less, and then reduce if you find out that you're annoying users.
Yeah, this is great. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you all for sharing your insights and taking the time. So we will share a recording of this. And then if anyone who's viewing has additional questions, please reach out to us and our panel will be happy to answer it. All right, have a great day and thank you again.
Thanks, Samantha. Thanks, everyone. It's great. Bye-bye.